title of the talk is something which is not coming here, but it's called API Safari. Basically, the objective is to explore different options for building API servers in Ruby. We'll be covering 3 libraries. The first one is called Grape, the second one is called Web Machine, and the third one is called Celluloid. So the last one is not an HTTP, it's not for HTTP APIs, it's for RPC APIs. But it is still interesting because you come to know what are the various options for building an API, right? The reason for giving, that is the first reason for giving the talk. The second reason is that Ruby is fun, Ruby is productive, and there are various options for building a library. We basically want to explore different options and pick a library and have fun with it, right? So the first library is called Web Machine. It was developed by SceneCrypts from Basho. It is a port of the library by the same name, which is written in Erlang. So basically, it's an Erlang library which has been ported to Ruby. The second library is called Grape. This library is basically something like Sinatra, but dedicatedly for building APIs. And the third we talked about, that is Celluloid. I just want to ask, what libraries are you guys using? Everybody has used Rails, obviously. How many of you have used Grape? Very few. How many have used Celluloid? How many have used Sinatra? Quite a lot. Cool. Okay. Nice. We'll not talk about. I'll not be talking about what is a good API, what is hypermedia. The reason is that when it was 2006. In our offices and all, we used to have all the discussions saying what is a good API, you're building a bad API. But nowadays, when you're working with people, there is like telepathy. Like you know what's a good API, the other person also knows what's a good API. And when I say what's a good API, what I mean is that what Rails understands to be a good API. But for the purposes of my discussion, I am not a REST nerd, so that is good enough for me. But just to summarize, 2 basic points, right? You should use HTTP verbs. You should not always post to a resource. You should have different URLs, like one for get, one for post, etc., etc. And you should have meaningful URLs. So you should have you shouldn't always post to a resource called example.com. You should have a URL called example.com/orders. In order to compare these different frameworks, I am going to use an example for Starbucks. So this example is a little famous. And this is also given in detail in this book called Rest in Practice. And it was, I think, introduced in this article from InfoQ with the URL which is there on the board. I think this article must be in 2006. And surprisingly, he talks about hypermedia-ish APIs, but of course we will not talk about hypermedia. So there are 4 stories. The first story is that there are basically 2 entities in this conversation. There is a barista, the person who serves coffee, and there is a customer. So let's say I am the customer. As a customer, I want to order a coffee. So when I order a coffee, I basically just tell the barista, give me this drink, which is a string. And the barista takes the order and he gives me a representation of a order, right? And you're posting to the resource, post order, and you get either a 201 created in response to the order. If the coffee does not exist, you get a 404 or a bad request, or you get something basically. The second story is that, let's say I have ordered a latte. After ordering a latte, I want to change it to a mocha. Then I basically make a put request. If you see, the URL is a bit weird if you're coming from Rails, because the URL is orders and the ID is a parameter, right? Frankly, the reason is that I'm using a library called, the Web Machine library doesn't support ID parameters. So I wanted to compare and contrast different libraries, so I took a URL like this. This is also good because you're posting to a resource and the ID is basically a parameter. And the second thing to note is that it's a put request, it is not a post request, because put is supposed to be idempotent, right? So if you make multiple put requests, you should get the same response. So by saying that it is a put request, we are communicating that, look, we want it to be idempotent. The third story is that when you have got an order, you can make a payment. one more thing, if you're making a put order and you have already paid for an order, then you cannot change the order. So let's say I order for latte, then I make the payment. Then after making the payment, I cannot go to the barista and say, please change my order to a mocha. The assumption being that once you have made the payment, the barista will start making the coffee. So then it's too late basically. And the fourth and last story is basically you get to this orders resource, give it a status, and you get a list of orders. The barista uses this list to prepare the coffee. Again, we are not going to talk about hypermedia, but I thought it was pretty interesting that an article in 2006 talks about hypermedia. Pretty cool. All the examples are there in this URL. If you want to follow along, please feel free. The first framework is called Grape. It is built by Intridia, which is basically a pretty well-known consulting company in the US. So the first question you should ask is, why are you not using Rails? Come on. I mean, Rails is the most popular framework. Everybody has used Rails. There is a lot of community effort. Then why not Rails? I mean, that's a very relevant question. The answer is that Rails is good, right? I mean, you can write code like this, which is pretty familiar. But Rails is comfortable. If you want to use Rails, use this library. The reason I am not covering Rails is because everybody knows it. I don't think I'll be able to tell you like unique things about it which you guys don't know. So back to Grape. Do you think? Okay, let me ask you a question. Do you think power corrupts? Like, can somebody have, or can a framework, or can you have too much power? Like, if I say that this library, this language can do everything, is it bad? What do you think? So take a look at this example, right? This example is stolen from Railscast. So the objective was that you want so basically let's say you have a resource, you have a routes file, and you want to do versioning in Rails. A pretty easy way is that basically you do a namespace v2 and your URLs will be prefixed by v2, v1, v3, whatever. That's pretty easy. But let's say you want to dispatch by headers. So what you can do is that you can create a class called API. You can create a class which has a matches method, and that matches method has an if condition on request.headers. And this is how you define it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I get the fact that Rails is powerful and all. You cannot do the same thing in the web machine router, but doesn't seem good. I mean, I don't think this is the perfect DSL. Now take a look at the DSL for Grape. That's it. You say module foobar class API, and you say version 2 using header. That's all. And this DSL called version 2 accepts 3 arguments. It can either be a header, it can be something else which I don't remember, or if you don't specify anything, then it is just a URL prefix, right? And so basically I timed myself when I was developing these APIs. The web machine API took me 2 days. That is mostly because I am slow. But the other reason was that there is not much documentation about web machine. But the API for Grape took me like half an hour, that's all. So you just I mean, it's as if you are like it's like magic. You just write code and it works pretty well. That would be the same thing with Rails, but you get a pretty neat DSL. That's true. So it is like Sinatra, but only for API. Then the next question you would ask is, why Sinatra? Why shouldn't I use Sinatra? Basically, you would use Grape because Grape is only for APIs. The reason for its existence is that it was built for creating APIs. It has other features also, like you can generate documentation and all that, and it has got some DSL sugar. Let's say, so one by one, it's a minimum DSL. Let's say you want to specify a URL prefix. You say prefix. So let's say that you have a company, and company have departments. So the company name is foobar.com and the department is, let's say, Pune, and all URLs should have foobar.com / the department name. So you will say prefix Pune. So just by writing one line in your API, you will get that prefix. We already talked about version. The format is basically the default format, right? Now this is the URL for defining a resource. the things of note are basically, if you note, there is a description, description method on the top. Basically, it's like Rake, where the documentation is there in the API itself. If you look at this, also if you look at this code, this is like Sinatra, and the code is procedural. Your request comes into this rack endpoint, and then it is up to the framework to do what it wants with it, right? So we'll come back to this example when we look at web machine. But the thing is that this whole thing is procedural, one after the other. There is no, you can put a before filter, but in essence it is procedural, right? Now let's talk about web machine. I think this is my favorite library till now, other than Celluloid. As I said, web machine was made by C Encrypts of Basho. Basho is the same company which has created the RAYAC database system. Web machine is basically an Erlang library. C Encrypts ported it to Ruby, right? It's a bit weird, but it is fun. The premise of the library is that it is a state machine, right? So it is basically the HTTP specs modeled as a state machine. So the Basho people, they read the HTTP specs, the RFC, and they made executable HTTP specs. In the same way, RSpec is executable documentation, web machine is executable specs for HTTP. I don't know about you, but when I read the statement, my mind was blown. I mean, executable specs like sounds awesome, and it is pretty awesome. So C Encrypts had an article where he was explaining that why web machine, the decision which web machine has taken to model this as a state machine, why is it appropriate? What he says is that HTTP is a protocol. What I mean by protocol is that there are a number of steps which have to be done for the HTTP communication to take place, right? So let's say I want to make an HTTP request. There has to be handshake. Then after making the handshake, you have to decide on the accept headers. You have to decide on the content type. After deciding on the content type, you'll read the content body, and you will decide on the E tag. You will decide on the caching headers and all that, and then you will actually fulfill the request. So actually fulfilling the request is a small part of the whole process. After fulfilling the request, you will, based on the accept header, you will render some response and you'll send the response. Then based on the caching, you will do some other things, right? So that is the protocol, and all this example of this protocol, it's basically a flow chart. And if it is a flow chart, you can model it as a state machine. So that is the core assumption. And incidentally to this whole discussion, it's also pretty good for learning the HTTP spec. How many of you have read the HTTP spec? Actually, even I have also not read the HTTP specs, but just putting a debugger and going through the code tells you a lot about how HTTP handles the whole request response cycle. One second, sorry, let me skip ahead a little. This is a state machine which web machine says is HTTP. I don't know about you, but it seems pretty complicated, right? So this block in between, that is the E tag and caching negotiation. I mean, if I just understand that portion, I think my life is set. I don't know. Yeah, right, going back. What are some different examples of state machines which you have seen, right? What are some examples? So one example is basically before-after callbacks in ActiveRecord. It is not actually a state machine, but it has states. There is a before field. There is you enter a state called I'm going to save this record, and then you enter a guard condition which says before save. If before save is false, then the save does not happen. It is a kind of state machine. But the number of hooks in ActiveRecord are pretty less. I mean, there are some 11 hooks, right? Which is not bad, because ActiveRecord is not as complicated as HTTP. It's basically you are retrieving a record, you are updating the record, you are saving the record. So it's perfectly good. And another example for state machine would be acts as state machine or any other state machine library. So generally, I don't know about you, but generally I use it for managing a state column in a table. Let's say I want to manage the order state. So I'll create it as a state machine. I will say that you cannot change the state of the order as paid unless the payment is complete. So it's like database validation plus guards plus DSL. In web machine, because we are saying that it is a state machine, the decision on how to flow through the various states is determined by the request and the callbacks. So all of these are callbacks. So let's say those blue dots, right? Those blue dots are functions. Those are callbacks. When you are moving from one blue dot to the other blue dot, that is a transition. And that is basically a conditional statement. There are some 36 callbacks, which is pretty rich. So using those 36 callbacks, you can model a lot of things. So I know what you're thinking. Like, if you're modeling an active record object using callbacks, then the code becomes horrible really fast, right? So let's say you have a after create filter where you're sending a mail. You can do that, but let's say in a special case you don't want to send the mail, then your code will become ugly. We'll look at how we are handling it in HTTP machine, but let's just keep that in the back of our minds. So these callbacks fulfill different roles. The first which we talked about is a state guard. Now let's take an example of what exactly is a state guard. So so let's say IRCTC tells you that our API is down pretty much always, but we have a special requirement that the API should be down before 5 AM. This is a special requirement. Can anybody tell me that what is the status code for service unavailable? 5.3 actually. So even I don't remember it also. So if I'm building Rails apps, what I do is that Rack defines HTTP status codes for each of these HTTP statuses. So if you want to send a HTTP OK, you don't say head 200. You can do that, but you can also say head space symbol OK. If you want to say service not available, I think you can say head service not available or something, right? Now this is the HTTP web machine example. So you create a resource by saying web machine resource, and that is the base class, and you have a function which says service available, and you have some if condition there. This code will not run, but it's a pseudocode kind of ish. But there's a Boolean condition, and it is returning true or false. If you return false, then web machine will basically not do anything. It will return a 503 service unavailable by default. Now it is not up to you to decide what HTTP status code should be returned. If service available returns false, then web machine by default will throw this 503 service unavailable error. There won't be even a error body in the API response. So what I mean to say is that if you're creating a Rails API, you can do the same thing in a Rails API. You can do the same thing in a Rails API, but what will you do? You will create a before filter. In the before filter, you'll have some if condition, and then you'll procedurally write your code what you want to do, right? You will define some other function, and I will define some other function. So when you talk about why Rails is good because Rails defines all those conventions, right? By the same argument, web machine is good because it defines all these conventions. So semi-troll statement, by that statement, web machine is a better Rails. So you guys should all throw away Rails and use web machine. So yeah, it defines conventions basically. So that service available function is defined by convention. You don't have to configure anything, it is there by default. And there are various callbacks, and it returns 503 service available by default. if you don't define anything, basically you just create an empty class that you just define one function called toHTML, it will still work. And all this callbacks, all this functionality, all this HTTP spec functionality you will get for free. You just override things which you want. One more example. So some of this code would be unintelligible, but let's say you want to basically, let's say you are making a put request. If you are making a put request, you want to make sure that if you are putting on some resource, that resource should exist. Again, if you are using it, if you are building this API in Rails, you will write some filter, you will write some before condition. In this scenario, you write a function. If that function returns false, 404 will be thrown, right? So again, conventions, right? Web machine drives your code. So web machine is, to repeat, web machine is executable HTTP specs. It has conventions, which conventions are basically about HTTP status codes and the control flow. Your logic is basically like a snowflake which you just fit into that framework, and web machine will take care of the rest. We said that, one more thing, we said that these callbacks can fulfill multiple roles, right? One of the role of a callback is basically for things like guard conditions, like resource exists, whatever, right? The second responsibility for a callback is to actually take care of the request. So if you want to delete a resource, there is a special function which you have to write, delete resource. If you want to handle a post request, you have to say handle post. So when I saw that for the first time, what I was thinking is that, why is this a callback? The thing is that the whole thing is modeled as a state machine. So when a post request comes, web machine has to decide what to do with the post request. So that decision is basically a transition on a state. So for transitioning on a state, it has to go to that blue dot, right? That blue dot is a callback, basically. We were discussing about Rails. This is basically the Rails example. I can fit these things into a filter and clean up this whole code, but I did not do that because otherwise the slide would have become bigger. If you notice this example, if you notice the grape example, it is procedural in the sense that you have a resource called order, but you can define whatever you want. Basically, you can break the REST principles. I can have a function called create order. I can have a resource called example.com/create order. I can have a function called create order here. The responsibility of Rails, the responsibility of Grails, is basically to delegate the request according to the routes file and delegate to a route mount endpoint, right? And the whole the body of the request, the parameters, it is parsed in a hash and given to the request. Now the request, now it's the responsibility of this rack endpoint to decide what it wants to do with it. Now Rails is an MVC framework. Grape is not an MVC framework. So it gives you that structure on how to organize the code. But the fact remains that you are given this big fat hash in a procedural function and you decide what to do with it. That is the crux of the matter. By all this discussion, you would think that web machine is pretty good. Why are people not using web machine? What is so bad about it? I mean, why have I not heard about it? So frankly, I had heard about it because Basho had tweeted about it, and I just wanted to try it out, so I tried it out. But there are some disadvantages as well. The advantage first of all, the first disadvantage is that it is not popular. So that is a pretty big disadvantage. Rails, of course, Rails API, Grape has a much richer ecosystem. But let's come to the technical problems. So, I might be wrong. I'll have to check it out. But this is how you define a route in web machine. you say add, you give a URL. This URL is not slash foobar, it is basically the name of the resource. So if the name of the resource is order, you will say add order, and you will give a class name which is responsible for handling all that request. And you can pass a lambda, and in this lambda you can put anything you want. So basically, if I want a GET request, this is what I do, right? So this is nothing like the Rails API. This is nothing like the Sinatra API. The Sinatra API and the Rails API is pretty powerful. It is pretty friendly, right? And the second major problem is that it is not built for rack. So web machine is, so if you see frameworks like Grape is a first class rack citizen. So to give you an example, let's say you build a Grape API and you have a Rails app. What you can do is that you can mount the Grape app into your Rails app so that any request which comes to your Rails app on /API is delegated to your Grape app. So basically you have built two separate apps, but you deploy it as one. And you can mix and match. So let's say there is some request which is very popular and you don't like the overhead of Rails, you can use Grape and mix it. In Web Machine, people have built adapters for rack, but frankly I have not tried it out. But it doesn't seem a first class citizen as such. But yeah, I was supposed to do a demo here, but let me complete the slides and then I'll do a demo. Maybe now we'll do this after the demo. Sorry. Okay, let's look at it anyways. So Web Machine is an executable model for HTTP. So we have discussed these two frameworks, right? We have discussed Web Machine, we have discussed Grape. So this guy dblock is the creator of Grape. So I'll link to the slide later, but he compared Grape and Web Machine. Of course, I am picking statements here, so I am not. This is not exactly correct. You'll have to make your own decision as such by reading the whole article. But the thing is that Web Machine is, but the thing is that Web Machine is an executable model for HTTP. You write your callbacks and create a state machine for HTTP. And Grape is a DSL for creating RESTful APIs. What I mean to say is that Grape is, in Grape, you have a DSL. You know what your API should look like, and you write, and you basically express it like a DSL. When I say DSL, what I mean is that you write it like a paragraph. When you read a DSL piece of code, you can read it like prose, or you can read it like beautiful Ruby code, and you can make out what is happening there. On the other hand, if you're looking at Web Machine code, which is this, then it is like reading Node apps, I guess. So you have these different callbacks, you should know what these callbacks do, and if you don't know what these callbacks do, then you have no context to understand what is happening. The second difference, according to the same person, is that in Grape you have to be disciplined about the API methods. So because in my opinion, that is because the Web Machine API is not that powerful. In particular, the router is not that powerful. So because you have less power, it drives you to structure your code in a particular manner. But because Grape is a DSL, its reason for existence is to allow you to specify the API you want. You can specify what you want. It is possible, hypothetically, that you can define a bad API, right? But in the case of Web Machine is saying that, look, I have this perfect scaffold of state and the transition between states. You can do no wrong. You just define your own method, and I will take care of making sure that you are following the HTTP standard. So basically, if you're writing your API in Web Machine, nobody can come to you and say your API is not RESTful. Your API is RESTful if you write it in web machine according to the definition which is encoded in web machine, right? That is the difference. Again, in web machine you implement resource callbacks. In web machine, basically in web machine the state flow and the request response cycle is defined by callbacks. In Grape you write procedural logic. Basically you write if-else statements. Grape is a RAG framework while web machine is its own framework. Again, that does not mean that I have ever used web machine in production. I don't think I will be using it without understanding the code end to end. So if I have used Grape in production, if you want to use something in production, use Rails API, use Grape, or use Sinatra as well. Now the third example is for something called Celluloid. One second. Third example is something called Celluloid. Celluloid has got 3 projects. Okay, sorry, how many people have used Celluloid? So, how many people have used DRB? Okay, very few. Celluloid has got 3 projects. The first is Celluloid, of course. The third is, I don't remember, but it is basically like an event machine kind of library. And the third one is called DCell. Now, Celluloid is basically an actor framework like in Erlang. So, actors are basically objects which have got mailboxes. Mailboxes like your mailbox which you have at your home. If 2 actors want to communicate, one actor sends a message to the other actor and the other actor keeps that message in his mailbox and then he works on that message. So basically there is basically a buffer in between. So mailbox is like a buffer. You send a message, that message sits in the mailbox and what? That's all. For what? What the hell? Okay. Okay, so why fuck? So ठीक है. So why RPC? So in my opinion, the main advantage of RPC is basically you want to write Ruby code even while communicating between the client and the server. If you are building an HTTP API, you have to build an HTTP API, then you have to use a library called something like HTTP party and create a client, right? If you are using RPC, you basically create a server, you create a client, and both of them communicate using pure Ruby. Yeah. The other problem is that HTTP is bulky. What I mean is that if you're communicating using HTTP, you have got headers, you have some content body, and all of that is defined using some 1980s protocol, right? But if you are using an RPC framework, you are not constrained by the past. You can use a binary serialization, something like message pack, where you can communicate however you want. You can communicate using JSON, you can communicate using, if you use MongoDB, MongoDB has got its binary protocol, you can communicate using that, you can use what you want. DCell in Celluloid is like DRB, but much better. It gives you concurrency, it gives you supervision. Basically, if there is any failure happening, then it's something like Upstart in Ubuntu, where if an actor fails, then the actor will be restarted by default. Demo, yeah, sure, and finished. Thanks. Okay, one second. So this is the route file for web machine. So if you notice, what I was trying to get at it is pretty gnarly, not at all good to look at. I can't see my. Okay, let me open it in the terminal. This is not working for me. How do I do that? Okay, so one second. If you notice, there are some methods called content types accepted. So what it means is that if you have in a typical application you have a routes file, and after that the whole thing, there is no further communication, right? But in Web Machine, depending on the accept header or the content header, a different method is called. So in this case, what you're saying, if the content type is application JSON, then call this function called modify order. If the content type is some version whatever blah blah blah, then you can call a different function. If it is text HTML, then you can call some other function. Right? This is another callback. Basically, you are making a put request, and if there is any error, you can encapsulate that logic here. Same here. Let's say somebody is posting a request and that JSON is bad. Let's say bad due to a variety of reasons. Let's say there is some content which you want is not there. Then you can write it in that function. Now quickly let us take an example for celluloid. This is a server. Basically, first of all you start the node called dcellstart, and you provide an ID. Then you create a class. After creating the class, you basically define these functions. Inside the function, you can raise an error, and that will be serialized. That will basically show up on the client without you having to do anything. But if you are sending over an object which does not exist on the client, then you will get an error. If you compare it with DRB, if you are sending an instance of a class which does not exist on the client, then DRB will deserialize the class definition and will send it across over the network to the client, and the client will eval that code, which is basically magic. An interesting example would be, let's say you have an active record object which exists on the server. The client does not have the active record object, and active record is pretty complicated as it has loads of crap. So let's say you lot of things. Then let's say you are sending a request to the server. The server can return an active record object, and the client will get the same representation. That is not possible here. So what we are doing is that, as I said, we are using message pack. So we are taking an active record object, we are deserializing into message pack, and we are sending that serialization back to the client. So this is basically functions. These functions can be called by, let's say, doing something like this. You are getting an instance of a node, and you are calling this function called create order. That create order function hits the server. So the point I am trying to make is that if you are creating an RPC service, then you are basically communicating like Ruby. If you talk to a hardcore REST guy, or who follows REST APIs, what they will tell you is that REST is good for scaling in the large, because REST APIs are built like the internet. But REST APIs are good if you are communicating using internal components over a high-speed network. So I don't mean to say that HTTP is bad. HTTP is very good, but it pays to know about your choices, so you can make good decisions. That's all. Thank you.